Welcome to a video from DigitalLifestyle.com. In this video, I'm going to be deconstructing 3 classic synth icons for the Korg Wavestate. I'm going to be using the Korg Wavestate rack here, the module version, but it applies to the keyboard version, the SC version, the native version as well. I'm going to be looking at 3 iconic synth sounds and how you recreate them here on the Wavestate. So we're going to be looking at the Vangelis Blade Runner type lead, Van Halen Jump classic OBX brass sound, and the Stranger Things sequence as well. I thought I'd have a look at that as well. 3 iconic synth patches that I'm going to be showing you how to recreate them. And at the end of the video, I'll talk about there's a free download pack for this with those 3 iconic sounds. So I've already recreated them, but what I'm going to do is start from scratch and recreate those. So I'm going to start with Van Halen Jump, but I'm not going to use the one that I've already created. I'll start with the Init program and we'll get cracking. So here I've got an Init performance. Incidentally, I'm controlling the rack version from the multiplayer over here, but yeah, it's just easier for me to show you on the camera angles here than it is over on the desk where I normally have it with the key stage. So here's our initial patch, and how do we take that into that sound? Well, first thing, we don't need a wave sequence with this one. It's a very simple sound. So for the Van Halen, that classic Van Halen sound, we'll be recreating the OBX synthesizer, the Oberheim synthesizer that was used. So we don't need a wave sequence. We can go straight to a single multi-sample, and we've got a choice really. We want Sawtooth. I think this was really done with 2 Sawtooths slightly detuned. We could achieve that by having 2 layers slightly detuned, or we could use the detune option. I'll try and use the detune option and we'll see how it sounds. So we're going to need a good synth Sawtooth sound. So if you go into the oscillator selection, and you can look for Sawtooth, and there's loads of them to choose from. Now there is an Oberheim one, and there are some unison ones. So the unison ones have already got that detune applied. So let's have a see which one we'll use. I'm going to go with the Oberheim. That makes sense because it was an Oberheim originally. And now it's not there, is it, what we want? But it could be. When I was playing around with this before, I found, I did by ear really, that I like the sound of the 4-pole bandpass, 4-pole low-pass filter for this. So I'm going to change that. I'll show you why in a minute. So there's 2 things that and the envelopes is where we need to start to look at. So let's have a look at the amp envelope first. I think we just want to take that attack off a little bit to make it a little bit not as, because remember, we're creating a brass sound. That's what they were trying to do. It's the Oberheim brass sound. So you can hear if I just have a touch on that one. Now the filter, and I think this is where the sound really comes in. We're going to turn the filter down a bit, like that. And then we'll set the filter intensity quite high. There we go. I've put it all the way up actually there. And now let's hear how we adjust the envelope. Bit of attack time, bit of decay, not much decay, and quite a bit sustain. So let's try it. So we're not far off already. It's quite a simple one, really. Like I mentioned, I think the original had 2 detuned. So let's put 2 voices on and a bit of detuning. If we go too much, it sounds terrible. That's it. Now, because we've got the envelope quite high, we don't really need to have the cutoff rate. We've got the envelope intensity. Let's adjust that. we have it 0, it's too sharp. I think it needs maybe a bit of release. Okay, so I think that detune sounds about right now, and I think we're almost there now. On the multi-poly, you have got a SEM filter which models the filter that was on the Oberheim, so you probably can get closer. But I think for this, we're okay. Now let's just flick filters around, and I'll show it in a minute. I think I might actually just gonna get a little bit more attack on that initial. That's it. Let's try the different filters. And because we're using the filter quite open, you're not going to hear a huge amount of change, I don't think, using the different filters. If we were going a bit lower intensity, you can hear the brightness change between those two, and I think that fall pole. But once we get the intensity up, they sound quite similar. In terms of effects, I add a bit of compression and maybe some stereo chorus, a bit of delay like that. Perhaps we don't need too much of it. Let's give it a try. I think that's it, really. Without spending too much time, I didn't want to spend sort of an hour going through each one of these, but I think that's pretty much it. So let me save that one. So now let's look at the Stranger Things intro. So here's one I've got, which has got the layers on and the heartbeat in there as well. So let's have a go at recreating that. Right, so I've got initial performance now. So there's two elements to that. There's that synth sequence, and then there's the heartbeat. So I'm going to be using the wave sequencing on this to get that sequencer. So I'm going to go here and click on time mode to change it to tempo mode and change that note so there's no crossfade on it. And now we need to choose a sound. So I'm going to choose a nice sort of like nice fat synth sound on that. Now we could use a sine wave, we could use one of the unison waves, or we could use a sine wave or a sawtooth wave, I should say, and use unison mode to add some effects. So I'm going to try this unison one. We could actually have two different unison, so it's a bit variation, but I'm going to stick with one. So we'll just drag that in like that. So go to sample lane, drag those corners in. So we've just got that on there. It'll all be about the filter on that. Now we want the pitch then to do that thing, which goes, so it's C, E, G, B, C, going up and then back down again. So I can pretty much implement that on here. So we need 5 notes. So we know the pitch is intervals from the root. So if you're playing a different key, it will play on a very different key. So it's not a set note like a music sequencer. It's relative to the key that you're holding down. So you're holding down the C. The first note will be a C, so there's no interval. The second note will be the E. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4 intervals up. Then the G is a 7. Then we're 11 for the B, and then 12 for the C on the high octave. And then we can drag the ends over like that. Right, we could program that to go back down again. So we'd have 5 more notes that are going back down, but I wanted to show you the forward backwards option, which is there. So now we can change that to a 16th. So I'm going to time in. We're only using that one note, timing note. That's fair. That's it. Right. So now we need to get the filter on there. So, and if I reduce the filter, I can increase the envelope. I could use an LFO to increase the cutoff. But I want a more of a sharp attack, and then sort of a release on that. So more of a triangle shaped envelope. A couple of ways we could do this. We've got an envelope here, we've got the filter envelope. So let's look at that filter envelope. I'm going to set it with a sharp attack and some decay like that, and maybe a bit of release. Now we've not applied the filter envelope, so let's start applying that. So you hear that first one, then it doesn't get triggered again. So you could then change the trigger source, so what I'll do, to be a step pulse. So the step sequence, every time it goes on to the next step, it will send a pulse which will trigger the envelope. Now, we've got that intensity there. Now, wouldn't it be good if we had an LFO to control that intensity? Which we could do. So what I'm going to do then is going to say that that intensity is controlled by the filter LFO. So let's apply a bit of that. Now let's go to the LFOs. It's tempo sync it, slow it right down. I'm going to make it free running mode, which means it's just constantly running. Doesn't matter if we repress the key, it won't re-trigger the filter, the LFO. So there you go, that's doing what we want. Now, at some point it goes quite low and you can hardly hear it, so we could just boost that cut off a bit. That's probably about right. Or we could just reduce that intensity a bit. So that's pretty much it for that layer. We could put a bit of compression, a bit of chorus, a bit of delay. We'll say that's okay. Now, I think on the original, I can hear two oscillators, one an octave lower. So there's a few different ways of achieving that. The main one will be here to, it's probably the best way is just to have another layer with the sequence, just turn an octave down. So let me do that. So I've just saved that. So now I can go to the other layer and bring that in. So let's hear them both together. We could detune it and have a little sort of, let's just tune it slightly. And I think what I'm going to do is bring it an octave down. There we go. Okay, so that's our two layers. For that heartbeat effect, I'm going to go to layer C, click on timing, change that to tempo mode, and no crossfade. So what we need is two kicks and then a bit of a rest. So sample, I can go to percussion, choose any of the kick drums, and we'll apply a bit of LFO to dial it back. So anyone, I think I'm going to change that. I don't want the dark one, I just want the dry one. So take that down to it. So what do we want with that one? I can hear two notes and a rest. So let's have two notes and then a rest. So we've got three notes that I've added there. It's got two. And then I can make that a rest. So let's see how that fits in. It's probably okay actually. But I think actually when I listen to the original, it just goes dum dum and it's synced up. So I think what we need here is these to be a bit quicker and then the rest to fill the gap. So I'm going to try and change that to a 16th, to 2/16, and then a quarter. Let's just see what that sounds like. That's probably a bit more like what I want. So just listen to that layer on its own now. It just sounds like a kick drum. So let's if take that cutoff down a bit. So bring that cutoff down a bit. We could also experiment with a couple of other kick drums as well. Let's try the gating. We'll see if it sounds. No, it sounds too much like a drum when I do that. So let's stick with the. Let's try some of these. Let's try the pop one. Still stands, but I did see one then, a soft one, which probably will suit what we want. Nope. I'm going to go back and use that first one with the envelope, with the filter. Again, we can press some compression with that. I don't think I'll need any chorus, but I might put a bit of delay on there. So bringing the 3 layers back now, we can go to the master reverb. Let's put some dark ambient sounds about right. Let's see. So maybe that's about what I want to do. There's a spare layer left, which you could use to add some of the other effects from the track as well, but I don't want to go too long on these individual segments. But there's an idea of using the motion sequencer to create a musical sequence and the motion sequencer to create that heartbeat type effect. Now, the final one I will look at is the Blade Runner type lead sound. So this is the one that I created earlier, and I'm using a couple of 2600s to do this. Well, I've got PWM and 2600, and you see I've got some modulation there and 4 poles and things like that. So what I tried to do on this one is the envelope's slightly different between the 2 different layers. So let me start from scratch on this one. There we go. We'll do 2 layers, but for now we only need 1 layer. I'm going to change, not using the sequencer, I'm just using a multi-sample. And then what I'll do then is I'll choose a waveform. So I want a nice Sawtooth waveform, and then I'm going to combine that with a pulse width as well. So there's plenty of Sawtooth, as you can see. We've got loads of them. So if you want something a bit brighter, you could go with the unison one like that, or a bit mellower, we could go with the 2600. I like the 2600, so I'll use that. Of course, it doesn't sound very good at the moment. So what can we do with that? Well, first of all, we want to turn the filter down and we want to apply some filter envelope. So I've got the intensity. Let's turn that up. Not bad. Amp envelope, I'm going to alter that as well. Some release on that filter. And what I think we need now is just some LFO, just to give it a bit of flavour. Let's try it. And typically Vangelis used a lot of pitch modulation, so I'm going to use a pitch LFO on there. Not too much. I tend to quite like faster pitch LFOs, but on Vangelis it's quite slow. Now we can play with the filters if you wanted to get a bit more CS80 like. We could probably go with the 4 pole, or here's a bit brighter there. So we turn that intensity down. That LFO is probably a bit high as well. Nice little resonance. if you hear the CS80 drive, it really is the performance of Vangelis and the effects as well that really make a big difference. So I can't do the performance side, but I can add some effects. So I'm going to add some chorus and a bit of delay, and we'll definitely go with some nice reverb, maybe a bit of cathedral. Okay, now we could simulate having two oscillators. CS80 has got two oscillators. I think how I would do it, I'm going to do it on here, is I think it has two oscillators, one tuned an octave apart. CS80's got separate envelopes for each oscillator, so that's what a trick I'm going to do it, but in a second. But you could simulate having two oscillators playing the same note with a bit of separated apart with some detuning. So let's have a go on that. Now I could detune even more. Actually, it does sound quite good, doesn't it? So let's leave that on there. Or what you could even do, you could use one of these controls on here. The mod controls, they're not being used for anything else. So let's just use that shape one down there. So what I could do is I'm going to do plus minus, so it's a plus or minus value. I'm going to set the voices to 1 and the detune to 0, and I'm going to have the shape controller just alter that maybe to do 3, and the detune also be affected by the shape controller, be a bit higher. So that's turning this onto 3 voices. I need a bit more detune on that. So I'll turn that down. So you can control that detune. That'll do. So let's save that. Right, so save that. So I mentioned about dual layers. So what I'm going to do now is open that CS80. Turn the other layer off for now. I'm going to have this one with a slightly slower filter envelope and attack. So it just comes in a slightly different time. But I'm going to change that sawtooth for some pulse width. So let's try this one. So put both together. Maybe bring it an octave higher as well so you can hear it coming in. There you go, you can hear that. It's later coming in. So maybe bring it a bit closer. So could have a look at some other PWMs as well. There's one from the original Wavestation. Yeah, I quite like that one. So we'll save that as C82. And then that's pretty much it, really. That's our sort of Vangelis type lead sound. There's more stuff I could do with that. Definitely if you've got a poly aftertouch controller, I would definitely look at having that LFO with some poly aftertouch. What I'll do to simulate it, because I'm going to put the pitch LFO on with the mod wheel, and I'll try it with the. So we'll try it with the poly aftertouch as well. So we're getting more Vangelis there. It's getting away from Blade Runner, but it is that kind of Vangelis type effect. And then I can just add some Poly Aftertouch, and pitch LFO. Got a similar ramp. Just reach over. So this Poly Aftertouch is really nice, sort of expressive for that kind of CS80 sound. So that's it. So there's 3 iconic synth sounds: Blade Runner, CS80 from Vangelis, got Stranger Things theme, and we've got the Van Halen Jump sound as well. I think if there is any more iconic synth sounds, please let me know. I'll have a go at creating them. The Wavestation is a great synth for creating stuff like this. It's very versatile. You've got the samples in there, but you've got filters and everything else, so there's a lot you can do with it. So thanks for watching this video. I'll see you on the next one. And don't forget to download this pack. It's the Icons pack. I'll update it as I add new synths to it, but it's a free download from thedigital.com. Thanks for watching.